This is a brief 28storms.com tropical weather update as we head into Friday night and Saturday morning across Australia. The first graphic is the latest update on Cyclone Narelle from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Maximum sustained winds based on their latest advisory are now up to 110 knots, and based on the latest satellite imagery, it looks as though that estimate may even be perhaps a little conservative. I know in the previous video I was somewhat doubting some of the higher intensity forecasts, but intensity forecasting is one of the bigger challenges with tropical cyclones, and the storm has definitely overachieved somewhat within the last 6 hours. Overall, the track forecast is still very promising for interests out across the coastal regions of Western Australia. We can still anticipate some water level rise, especially along those low-lying areas of the coast, and some of the outer squalls associated with the cyclone can still produce gusts exceeding 90 kilometers per hour, but by far the strongest and peak winds associated with Narelle are going to remain well to the west. You may also notice as we go into the 4 and 5 day range, the cyclone could be in the general vicinity of Perth. However, by the time the cyclone moves that far to the south, you're going to have nothing more than some remnant shower activity and perhaps some gusty wind conditions to deal with, but nothing more. The latest update from the Australian Bureau of Meteorology has maintained the cyclone's intensity as a Category 4. However, in their tropical cyclone advice, they are not ruling out the potential for the storm to increase to a severe Category 5 cyclone within the next 24 hours. Either way, whether it intensifies or not, the track once again is still looking a little bit better compared to a few days ago, with the inner core of the storm remaining well to the west of Exmouth and Coral Bay, and you can see that they are starting to cancel some of the cyclone watches and warnings along the Pilbara. The latest microwave satellite pass captured Cyclone Narelle within the past 2 hours, and you can see the center of the cyclone clearly to the north-northwest of Exmouth, and we've been waiting for the eye to become more established and better defined, and it has surely done that within the past 12 hours. As a matter of fact, Cyclone Narelle is beginning to take on that classic textbook cyclone appearance on visible satellite imagery, with nearly perfect outflow channels in both the northern and semicircles of the storm, and the eye is becoming less cloud-filled with time, and you can also see that on the enhanced infrared, especially in the last 1 or 2 frames. That clear is now very apparent, and there is the very good chance that this will become a Category 5 cyclone on the Australian scale. Also, as we look at the current motion of the storm, it still appears to be moving off toward the southwest, which is certainly good news. So why are we seeing rapid intensification? Well, first and foremost, the cyclone is still over 29 to 30 degrees Celsius water temperatures, which is the fuel source that tropical cyclones need to strengthen. And also, as we look at the convection, it is fully wrapping around that center of circulation, so any dry air in the immediate vicinity of the storm is being shunted away by this developing convection. And we can also see on the latest wind shear analysis that the upper level ridge is also shifting a little bit more toward the west. This is allowing the vertical wind shear over top the tropical cyclone to diminish, and we're looking at shear values generally less than 10 to 15 knots. So overall, this is a very favorable environment until the storm starts to dip below 20 degrees south latitude. This is where the water temperatures begin to cool down, and we also have these very strong westerly winds in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. This is a good example as to how easily the models can be fooled when it comes to intensity forecasting, and the Joint Typhoon Warning Center also needs to be given a lot of props because the storm is now much stronger than what the models have shown for the next 12 to 24 hours. The storm is at least Category 3 intensity based on Atlantic hurricane standards. As a matter of fact, it's more than likely now a Category 4. So the models, or at least most of these, were rather inaccurate with their intensity forecast within even just a 24-hour span. The latest spaghetti model plot shows that the models are in fairly good agreement, and they are also in very close agreement with the latest forecast track from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, so the storm will remain to the west of Coral Bay and then probably start to recurve toward the southeast as a significantly weakening storm. This is a quick GFS model snapshot as to what it is expecting in terms of surface winds as we head into the afternoon hours on Sunday. You can see the eye of the cyclone to the northwest of Coral Bay, but along the coast you can still expect those winds to be exceeding potentially as much as 90 kilometers per hour in terms of the gusts. And the depiction from the ECMWF model valid at the same time is very similar. If anything, it is a little weaker with the cyclone, but given that the strength of the storm is already over what some of the models have shown, the GFS is probably more accurate. Of course, this is a no-brainer, but if you have any boating interests, don't even think about doing it off the western coast of WA. This is the latest significant height of combined wind waves and swell based on the WW3 model, Wave Watch 3, and as we go into the next 42 to 48 hours, it is forecasting significant wave heights in excess of 35 to 40 feet, and this is going to remain the case for at least the next 3 to 4 days as the storm slowly moves off toward the south. Here's another regional look at Cyclone Narelle to the north of Exmouth, but not to be outdone, we will slowly transition our focus over the next several days more so toward the top end, as it looks as though the monsoon trough will begin to strengthen more so in that region, and perhaps even the Coral Sea within the next 5 to 10 days. That remains to be seen, but overall the main idea is that the attention will start to shift toward the east. The Madden-Julian oscillation is a global forecast parameter that can help dictate the amount of tropical cyclone activity from basin to basin and week to week. You can see that the MJO is in a favorable state out across the maritime continent, which coincides with the time that Cyclone Narelle formed, but the MJO will be moving more toward the east into the western Pacific, and that is why interests out across the top end and perhaps the Coral Sea may start to see an increase in convective activity over the next 10 or so days. With all of this in mind, the extended models are beginning to show a number of suspect lows that we'll have to bear watching in future model cycles, and that's also not to say that one of these top-end lows still cannot drift off toward the west, so the entire northern coastline of Australia will have to be paying attention to the tropics, and if that weren't enough, the models are also showing some increased cyclonic activity out toward the South Pacific, so interests out across Fiji and the Samoas may also want to keep an eye on that area as well. But again, all of this is an extended forecast. It is unlikely that all of these lows will develop, but there is a good chance that we will have at least one tropical cyclone development within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So that wraps up the tropical weather update for the South Pacific and Australian region on this late Friday night into Saturday morning. We will have more updates here at 28storms.com as time permits, and if anything significant changes in the deep tropics, but I don't expect anything overly different to change here within the next 12 to 16 hours. So thanks again for watching, and once again, the best thing you can do to support the cause here is to just go ahead and spread the content as much as you can, and also stay safe out across the coastal portions of Western Australia. So that's all for now. I'll see you again here soon.